Hey everyone, welcome to Youser. I'm Jeremy. This is the show all about user-generated content in MMOs. This week we're going to take a look at Aardwolf MUD, talk a little bit about what a MUD is as I show you specifics, and share what's universally a MUD tools, and what's specific to Aardwolf. So this should be really great for people who know nothing about a MUD. If you've never heard of a MUD and don't know what it is, or you heard about it and still don't know what it is, stay tuned, because I should be totally cleared up in this. And if you are familiar with MUDs but not with Aardwolf, you'll be seeing some specifics to Aardwolf. And even if you're just an Aardwolf fan and you want to stick around to see what I have to say, so you could comment and talk to me in the comments below. So what is a MUD? It is a multi-user dungeon. It's a precursor to today's graphical MMOs. You'll find familiar systems and similar features that today's MMOs pulled from out of the old MMOs. For instance, you'll see on the right here I have a scorecard of sorts. It shows my attributes, my alignment, how much gold I have, and you see down below the graphical representation of my health bar, mana, moves, and TNL means to next level, and that's how much experience I need to get before I'll level up. And leveling, the whole concept of leveling comes from, it originated, it was called the DQ method of progression, which I believe was invented for or right before MUDs. And today's MMOs still use that. I mean, we go out and kill a mob to earn a few points of experience, which helps us reach the next level, which unlocks more gear that we can wear and more spells we can use, and so on. If I type in score, there's different shortcuts I can use to look up more information about me, my player, the game. For instance, I do have an inventory. You carry bags on your person. You can see what I am carrying right now, what I'm wearing, my equipment list. I don't have much. I'm low level. I just finished the academy. So you will find similarities. There's even questing. So you can find a quest giver, accept the quest, go on it, and earn a reward and some gold, and a lot more. And you'll find similarities and differences between different MUDs, just as you would in today's MMOs. There'll be differences, like World of Warcraft and Runes of Magic has similarities and differences, and so on. So does Lotro and all the others. So that's, something I think a new person new to MUDs can probably understand or make the connection to if you play MMOs. But the world can be a little harder to understand. You're probably right now wondering, what is the world? How does a real world get represented? How can that be a real leather jacket? It's just a word. And how can I be standing in a room? Well, everything is very imaginative. It takes a lot more to just visualize. Aardwolf, more than many other MUDs, have some rudimentary yet very helpful graphical representations. These little maps here. What I try to describe to people, what I try to tell them when I describe the world of any MUD is, imagine the world was created on graph paper. They can be very large or very small. They can have separate areas. There could be a forest. There could be a main continent, and in that continent can be a forest, and then to the west of that forest can be a desert, and they can be separated, yet you still have to travel on roads between those areas. So the whole world is drawn on graph paper, so to speak. And as an example, this rudimentary map is sort of like top down, like you're in the air looking down on the map. And this is the academy. This is where you start and go through your tutorials. And so each square on that graph paper is an area that they call a room in MUD terminology. It doesn't matter if you're actually outside or inside in the world. I could be at a farm and out in the farm and see the sun above me, or that would be the description, right? But that's still considered a room because the whole world is made up of these little squares. So you could have a city that's a vast, complex shape of squares to represent alleys and back alleys and main roads, and then all these little squares to represent the houses amongst the city. Like this one has rooms. I could and you move basically. You tell the computer you want to move north, south, east, or west. So I can do shortcuts that you can do in many MUDs. Just W for west, and then I can go north, and then I can go east. And as you can see, as I move from each square to square, it gives me a new small description to paint a picture of what that little area looks like to me. And then it gives me the visible exits I can see. And then in some cases, if there's people and objects in the room, it'll tell you that, like for instance, it says there's a blackboard that has a review of the economics lesson, and then it says Vladia, the economy treasurer, guards the vault. Now that's an NPC, but that would also show up if it was a real person. And actually, on this other graphical map that looks even more rudimentary, something like an ASCII map, if I look within the visible area, I can see this red asterisk. Now a red asterisk represents another player. So there's actually another player in this game, and I could walk to that room and then interact with them. There's different ways of interaction. Sometimes you have to be in the same area or room with a person to interact with them, to trade. Just like in a graphical MMO, you'd have to be right in front of the person to initiate a trade. But there's other things I could type, who is, say, Trurian. Whoops. Trurian. And then there, I'm not in the same room as Trurian, but I get some information. This is basic information when you look at any person, but this is also sort of the character sheet. And down below the basic information, which they have a lot here, when you hit enter to keep scrolling down below that information, you get a description field that the player themselves filled out. So Trurian filled this out with all this colored text, and for whatever reason, some people just, it's the same as a graphical MMO. But that's basically how you move around. You can even move up and down. So just to show you a little bit more, to give you a feel for it, if you're totally new to, I could just keep hitting south over and over and over. And now these are the steps to the academy. If I go down, I kind of go into the city. And bam, you can see, now this is a map representing the city of Alor. And this is a whole city. And then there's colored blocks. Like I said, many MMOs, or maybe I didn't say this, but many MUDs, that is, will only have one screen with white text. They won't have maps of any kind. And that's fine. That's okay. I really like having this little graphical representation. For some reason, it really helps me wrap my head around the world being a solid 3-dimensional entity of its own, with all of its many cities and houses and forests and everything inside of that. So colored areas, green might represent some forest areas. There's some stores here, and I could go to, and then you go to a store and there'll be a shopkeeper, and then you can interact with them. And there's many different ways to interact, and you do have to use it by typing, so you have to know what all these commands are, and depending on how complex and deep the game gets, which could be really complex, it really these MUDs have started developing vast libraries of what they call help files, and a help file is pretty universal to MUDs. Some do it better than others because it's all dependent on what the developer does, how they write it. Now, so far, I found Aardwolf's to be very well written. Grammar and structure, sentence structure, and paragraph structure, very well written, very clear and understandable. The content, the wording, I found they're all very, very nicely done, formatted. Now, somebody totally new to the game, you'll start right here, and they'll ask you to enlist in the academy, and you'll go through a series of tutorials that cover universal MUD commands as well as specific Aardwolf commands. And when I went through it, I found it to take a long time. And a totally new person to MUDs will, they might find it daunting or bloated or too, overly exhaustive. They might find it needless, but it really isn't. A veteran, for instance, they already know the tools at hand. They can just like that car, like that car you learn to drive. If you know how to drive the car, you can go to a city you've never been to and fairly easily know how to get your way around because you know how to navigate roads and you know what the road signs mean and all that good stuff, and traffic signals, you know all that stuff. But if you're totally new, you might have to learn how to operate that car, and then every little thing you run into, you don't know what to do with your car in relation to the red lights because you don't know what the red light is, and that's sort of how I would express a help file or learning help files for the first time. So veterans could probably skip this entire tutorial. I wouldn't. I think you can fast forward through each individual lesson because you do get some nice starter gear and some nice amount of gold, and it does kind of at the very end kind of point you into a couple new directions if you want. But for the most part, once you get through all that, you'll probably have a really good understanding of how to operate Aardwolf. And even if you never play another MMO or another MUD after this, it will give you a lot of the basics to understand how to operate inside of any MUD, and it gives you the tools to learn how to learn. So, even if a veteran comes in and skips everything, and they come across something that's totally new to them for Aardwolf, they could still understand. They could type help quest, and it would give them the specific commands that Aardwolf uses. Because one MUD might use the word look, one might use the word inspect, or both, and for instance, to talk to a NPC, you might say speak in one MUD, but you might use the word talk in another MUD, or both again. But that it doesn't matter if there's those differences because a veteran knows how to figure that out. But so I found the help files to be very exhaustive, but in a good way for Aardwolf and for MUDs in general. There's lots of them, and it will cover almost anything you could possibly think of, and they're all well written. And I've even read other people talking in chat a couple times already over the last few days of how much they like Aardwolf's help files. So I think it's a good thing, a testament to it. I mean, it's a very good thing, especially if it's text-based. Aardwolf has some really interesting player-made or user-generated content, if you will. Even though I feel MUDs themselves ask a lot more of players and their creativity and imagination to actually take part and create. You have to kind of use more. The game kind of asks more of you to enhance your own personal gaming experience than, say, some graphical MMOs would. But on top of that, Aardwolf has player housing. They actually call them manors, and if I use a help file, I can look up manors to get a little bit of information on them. It describes what they are. Here it's even saying married players can share the expenses. So there's marriage in this game. But the manors, they can get expensive for the upgrades because you can add rooms and you can do things to them. Here's a... Let me find... there's other commands that are more specific, so I could type help, and I've already learned this earlier, so I could type moo rooms, and then get a little bit of information on how you'd customize a room or upgrade. So when you get a standard manor room, you'll have a chance to add your own name and description, and it will tell you the information like your name will be here, the heal and mana rate. But also there's these upgrades, and there's a good handful of them, but they can get expensive. I believe the initial room costs 60 quest points. Now they shouldn't take too long. For instance, I think if I take a look at me, I'm only level 11. Whoops. I'm only level 11 dwarf. But if I look at, I think I'm looking at QP earned, it says 70. So maybe, I'll have to double check, but I'm only level 11. I might be able to get my first manor already. But the upgrades, let me scroll back up. Some of them are 3,250,000 quest points. Some of them cost trivia points, and maybe initially I might need that. I don't know. I'll figure out the details of that later, but I believe this is only for an upgrade. So to create a new room, which is adding on to your original manor, is 10 TP, and that stands for trivia points, which might be standard among MUDs. It might be unique to Aardwolf. I know World of Warcraft and other MMOs have alternate forms of currency. Runes of Magic has mementos and siege badges, and World of Warcraft has, I think, PvP badges and different forms that basically amount to alternate forms of currency because you use those points to spend on better gear and whatnot. And there's probably a very similar situation between MUDs, where MUDs have different names for them, but they're all essentially alternate currency to buy the different things that they have in their MUD, in a particular MUD. So that's sort of the player housing, and it really asks you to be imaginative, because if you look here, your room comes with so much information, and they give you a certain amount of lines, but this is where you can get creative. This is where you can really be imaginative and paint a picture of what your manor or the rooms in that manor look like for other players who want to visit. So there's a lot of opportunity for the user to create that content and exactly how they want to. There's some limitations, like it said. There was some limitation on characters or how many lines you can type out. But, you can always get more rooms as, grow your manor. So, that does it for about most of what the mechanics or how the in-game operates that I wanted to talk about. There's tons more, but you could dive in yourself to start learning more. But I wanted to cover the interface real quick, and this interface is different than many other interfaces. First of all, I'm using a client. It's called a Mush client, and this is the Aardwolf client, actually, that the developers built to be tailored to use with Aardwolf, to be conducive with how Aardwolf plays. Now you can play MUDs using a Flash player. You can there are many different clients out there that all have different functionality and different ways of configuring, and you don't always have to have a specific client to go with a specific game. It's not like, you have to have the Runes of Magic client connects to Runes of Magic, WoW client connects to WoW. No, it's not always, it's not like that. You can find independent clients that will hook up to any or many different MUDs. But this one in particular is geared towards how they built Aardwolf to display. And like I was saying earlier, most or many MUDs have one screen, it's just white text. Aardwolf is highly configurable, very, very configurable. As you can see, I can change window sizes. As you can see here, I can move windows around. I could even make windows disappear. I could only display the ones I want to display. The text within each of these windows, I can change the font type. If I had a real scary or real cool fantasy looking script, that looked like something like would be written, just very fantasy looking typeface, I could use it. I could change the typeface. I could change the font size, color. I have a lot of control over what information I see and what window I want to see it in. And there's a lot of stuff that's not going to display here because I have a lot of stuff turned off. Like I could look up channels, and these are just some of the many channels in the game that all do different things. There's a gossip channel, which I think here written in blue up here in my communication log, because it says pre-un gossips, and then that's sort of where people can hang out, and they don't have to gossip, but it's a nice place to just shoot the breeze. There's a market channel, which that's what everything in green up here in the communication log represents. There's, as you can see, there's a newbie channel I have on, but I have some stuff that's off. Like the Grapevine channel, which is a Ranger class channel. So I could turn this on. So I could see stuff that's all about my Ranger class or what other people are talking about in relation to Ranger, which that's, is my class. The barter channel I have off. I could turn that on. And I could choose what window the text displays in. And as you can tell by now, most of the other players that speak, all the text appears up in my communication log. By default, you can see some of that down below. So I moved that. I moved that through all the many, many ways of configuring. And if you look at the entire configuration window, just this one area is sort of the change of the colors. So it's highly configurable. I could change that to a white background with all red text, or I could just change it however I wanted. The downside, I feel, is it has a bit of a learning curve on figuring out how to customize. But once you figure it out, you have it. But yeah, it would be nice if it was better explained, though. Seriously, you can figure it out, and I'm sure I'll figure it all out. I've already figured a little bit out. I haven't figured everything out, though. So it's a process. It's just that leveling curve, or learning curve, rather, that I think could be done away with if they had a little more text written here to explain exactly what each color is and what will happen depending on how you do things. But there's just a ton of different ways to customize this. And just like graphical MMOs, you can create macros. There's actually built-in macros. Right here's a list of built-in macros, and that many MUDs will have this, and you can even make your own. So as you can see, here's the name, text, and action. So if we look down here, if I type look, what did I just say? The text is, it's right there. The text is look, and then the action is replace. I'm not exactly sure how to take that, but you could learn this, and I could learn it, and it's, just like creating macros. Some people have to figure it out in graphical MMOs, but yeah, you can even create macros. A ton of stuff to do to customize how you want this to look. And some old schoolers might diss the map and graphical stuff because they grew up with one window and just text, and they like it that way. And that's cool and everything. I mean, I myself am a word nerd. I love books, and I love the words. I love that. But for some reason, maybe it's the way I've trained my brain, or the way these current games I've gotten used to. Having this map, even though a lot of people would consider it very rudimentary, it just does wonders for me. It really helps me visualize and grasp what I'm doing and where I'm at, and really it doesn't seem to be that much. It seems to be, as far as like visually, it added a little map of squares, so it added a little bit, but does a lot for me. I mean, what I get out of it is a lot. And you could probably turn these windows off too, if you wanted to. So if you wanted to play Aardwolf like you play old school, one window, only white text, you probably could do that. You could set it up and program it that way, actually. So, I mean, and you'd be set. So that's going to about do it for this week, this episode of Youser. You can always get a hold of me. I'm on Twitter at Jeremy_Stratton. I'm on Google Plus as Jeremy Stratton. You can also find me on Facebook. I have a Facebook page, facebook.com/JustOneMore, spelled MMORE. And I also have a blog, justonemore.com, spelled the same. And also, Youser comes out every Saturday. I also have Dungeoneered that comes out every Friday that covers player-made houses and dungeons in EverQuest 2. And every Sunday I have Tellin' Times, which is anything and everything all about the classic MMORPG Vanguard, Saga of Heroes. So if you like this video, please just hit like, subscribe to my channel, and check out my other shows. And I'll see you next week.